arsenic, forever chemicals, and 240,000 nanoplastic particles per liter small enough to cross your cell membranes, all found in bottled water brands Americans trust with their health. But unscrew the wrong cap, and what you're swallowing is contamination linked to cancer and immune damage, sold in bottles that are dissolving into the water inside them. If you've been drinking the same brand for 10, 20, 30 years, none of it has left your body. I'm counting down 11 to stop buying, and 8 that earned your trust based on Consumer Reports, FDA recalls, and Johns Hopkins research. Starting with the brands charging the highest markup. Number 11. Arrowhead. Arrowhead has been selling itself as 100% mountain spring water since Nestle acquired it back in the 1980s. For decades, that label gave millions of people in the western United States the impression they were drinking something pure and untouched. But the words 100% have gotten Arrowhead into real trouble. A class action lawsuit filed in recent years argued that the claim was flat-out deceptive because independent testing found microplastics in the water. The complaint put it bluntly. Reasonable consumers do not understand 100% to mean 99 or 98%. They expect 0% microplastics. And a 2018 study from Orb Media and the State University of New York at Fredonia backed that up, finding microplastic contamination in over 9 out of 10 bottled water samples across 11 major brands and 9 countries. In half the brands tested, researchers counted more than 1,000 plastic particles per liter. Arrowhead was among the 6 brands named in separate lawsuits seeking damages for, among other things, loss of trust and loss of confidence in product labeling. When your label says 100% and the science says otherwise, customers notice. And the next brand on our list made a promise that was even harder to keep. Number 10. LaCroix. LaCroix built its reputation as the fun, colorful alternative to plain water. Those bright cans became a fixture in offices and kitchens across the country. And for a while, LaCroix could do no wrong. But a Consumer Reports investigation tested 12 carbonated water brands for PFAS, the forever chemicals that do not break down in your body or in the environment. 7 of those 12 tested above 1 part per trillion. LaCroix was one of them. Now, 1 part per trillion sounds like almost nothing. But some scientists believe that is exactly where the safety line should be drawn. These are chemicals linked to thyroid disruption, weakened immune response, and increased cancer risk, and they accumulate over time. The problem may partly be the carbonation process itself. Consumer Reports noted that sparkling waters were more likely to contain higher PFAS levels than still water. When contacted, LaCroix told Consumer Reports their products were well below current standards. But current standards is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence, because as of right now, there are still no enforceable federal limits on PFAS in bottled water. LaCroix is not the only sparkling brand with this issue, but the next one might surprise you more because you have probably seen it in your refrigerator door for years. Number 9. Deer Park. Deer Park has been a household name on the East Coast for generations. Marketed as 100% natural spring water, it projects the image of something drawn from a pristine source untouched by modern contamination. The reality is more complicated. Consumer Reports testing detected PFAS in Deer Park at 1.2, 1 parts per trillion. That is above the 1 part per trillion cutoff that many scientists and consumer advocates now recommend. And like several brands on this list, Deer Park was also named in microplastics lawsuits, citing the 2018 Orb Media study. At the time, Nestlé, which owned Deer Park, told Consumer Reports that their most recent internal testing showed undetectable levels of PFAS. But when a company runs its own tests, it gets to choose what it tests for, when it tests, and whether to publish the results. Independent labs do not give you that luxury. Deer Park changed hands when Nestlé sold off its North American water brands to One Rock Capital Partners in 2021 for roughly $4.3 billion. New ownership does not automatically mean new water quality. If you are on the East Coast and Deer Park is your go-to, it might be time to look at what else is on the shelf. And speaking of familiar brands that are not quite what they seem. Number 8. Poland Spring. Poland Spring has been in business since 1845, drawing water from springs in Maine. Or at least that is what the label says. In 2017, a class action lawsuit accused Nestle, which owned the brand at the time, of deceiving customers because the water, according to the plaintiffs, was not actually from a spring at all. The suit alleged it was coming from groundwater sources that did not meet the FDA's legal definition of spring water. That lawsuit dragged on for years before being settled. Meanwhile, Consumer Reports testing found Poland Spring's carbonated version above the 1 part per trillion PFAS threshold. And the still water version was not without problems either. When Nestle responded, the company said its recent testing showed undetectable PFAS levels, but by then, the damage to consumer trust was already done. If the water you have been buying since childhood might not even meet the technical definition of what it claims to be, what exactly are you paying for? Poland Spring is now part of the Blue Triton brand's portfolio, the same company that took over Deer Park. The name changed. Whether the transparency did is a question only independent testing can answer. Now, if you are finding this helpful, take a second to hit that subscribe button. It helps this channel keep making videos like this one. And trust me, you want to see what is coming next, because the remaining brands on the avoid list are where the real problems start. Number 7. Aquafina. Aquafina is owned by PepsiCo, and for years, the company marketed it with images of mountain peaks and pristine blue landscapes. The problem is that Aquafina comes from municipal tap water, the same water you can get from your kitchen sink. In 2007, after sustained public pressure and a campaign by Corporate Accountability International, PepsiCo agreed to add the words public water source to Aquafina's label. That quiet admission confirmed what critics had been saying for years. You were paying a premium for filtered tap water in a plastic bottle with a mountain on it. To be fair, Aquafina does run its water through a multi-step purification system that includes reverse osmosis. The water itself meets FDA standards, but the packaging is another story. Like nearly every bottled water sold in plastic, Aquafina is susceptible to microplastic contamination from the bottle itself. A 2024 Columbia University study using advanced laser imaging found that the average liter of bottled water contains roughly 240,000 plastic particles, 10 to 100 times more than earlier estimates had suggested. Most of those are nanoplastics, small enough to cross cell membranes. Aquafina is not dangerous in a single sip, but the combination of rebranded tap water, plastic packaging, and a marketing campaign designed to make you think otherwise is worth knowing about. Number 6. Perrier. Perrier has been bottling sparkling water in the south of France since 1898, and for more than a century, that European heritage gave it an air of sophistication and quality. Then came 1990. In February of that year, Perrier issued a worldwide recall of roughly 160 million bottles after traces of benzene, a known carcinogen, were found in samples tested in the United States. The company initially blamed the contamination on a dirty filter at its bottling plant in Vergès, France. But subsequent investigation revealed the problem was more systemic than a single filter. It took months for Perrier to return to store shelves, and the brand never fully recovered its reputation with the generation that watched it happen. Fast forward 3 decades, and Consumer Reports found Perrier among the sparkling water brands testing above 1 part per trillion for PFAS. That is the recommended safety cutoff that many scientists now advocate. Nestlé, which owned Perrier at the time, told Consumer Reports their own testing showed undetectable levels. But when your brand already has a benzene recall on its permanent record, the margin for reassurance gets very thin. Perrier still has loyal customers, but loyalty and safety are 2 different conversations. Number 5. Mountain Valley Spring Water. Mountain Valley has been around since 1871, bottled from a spring in Hot Springs, Arkansas. For generations, it was the water that sat on the table at the White House and was served in hospitals. It carried a reputation for absolute purity. But a 47-page class action lawsuit filed in recent years painted a very different picture. The complaint alleged that despite being advertised as the very best bottled water you can drink, purely sourced and free of pollutants, Mountain Valley spring water was found to contain uranium, arsenic, and bromoform. None of those substances are considered safe for human consumption at any concentration, according to the EPA. The lawsuit also accused the company of greenwashing through misleading environmental marketing. For a brand that built its entire identity on being the premium choice, the cleanest option on the shelf, those allegations hit especially hard. Mountain Valley does offer glass bottles, which eliminates the plastic leaching problem that plagues other brands. But glass packaging does not filter out what is already in the water at the source. When the spring itself is compromised, the bottle it comes in becomes beside the point. And the brand coming up next has a problem that your own kitchen sink could tell you about. Number 4. Dasani. Dasani is owned by Coca-Cola and launched in 1999. It is one of the most recognized bottled water brands on the planet, and it starts its life as municipal tap water, the same source that feeds your faucet at home. After running it through reverse osmosis, Coca-Cola adds a blend of magnesium sulfate, potassium chloride, and salt back into the water. The magnesium sulfate is the same compound sold as Epsom salt. The potassium chloride is commonly used in fertilizers. And yes, there was actual sodium chloride, table salt, added to drinking water until 2024, when Coca-Cola quietly reduced the salt content after consumer backlash. But the additives are only part of the story. In 2004, Coca-Cola launched Dasani in the United Kingdom. 5 weeks later, they pulled it from every shelf in the country after testing revealed illegal levels of bromate, a potential carcinogen, in the water. Dasani has never been sold in the UK again. And in a 2026 microplastics test by the Water Map, Dasani scored the highest particle load of all 7 brands tested, with a fluorescent signal of 143, the worst in the study. The container you are drinking from is shedding plastic into the water. The company that made it already had to recall it in an entire country. If your grandmother handed you a glass of water with Epsom salt and fertilizer compound stirred in, you would politely set it down. Dasani just puts it in a blue bottle. Number 3. Fiji. Fiji water sells you an image, a lush tropical island, an untouched artesian aquifer, water that has been naturally filtered through volcanic rock for hundreds of years. The label practically whispers paradise. But the FDA has a different story. Natural Waters of VT Limited, the company behind Fiji, recalled nearly 1.9 million bottles of Fiji natural artesian water after testing found manganese contamination and 3 kinds of bacteria in the water. We are talking about nearly 2 million bottles of water that were supposed to be among the purest on the market. And the recalls were not the only issue. Fiji was sued in January 2024 over microplastics contamination, and the company has faced separate legal challenges over what critics call greenwashing, making environmental claims that do not hold up under scrutiny. The brand also ships its water roughly 5,500 miles from the Fiji Islands to American store shelves, wrapped in single-use plastic. That plastic, like every PET bottle, sheds particles into the water over time, especially if the bottles sit in warm warehouses or delivery trucks. You are paying premium prices for water that traveled halfway across the Pacific in a container that is slowly dissolving into it. The next brand charged even more for trust and delivered even less. Number 2. Topo Chico. Topo Chico has been bottled in Monterrey, Mexico since 1895. And for over a century, it was a regional favorite in northern Mexico and Texas. Then Coca-Cola bought the U.S. rights for $220 million in 2017, and Topo Chico went from local treasure to national sensation. Sales jumped nearly 40% in a single year, reaching almost $184 million by 2020. Doctors recommended it. Bartenders used it as their premium mixer. It had a genuine cult following. And then Consumer Reports tested it. Topo Chico registered PFAS levels of 9.76 parts per trillion, the highest of any bottled water brand in the entire study. To put that in perspective, many scientists recommend a safety limit of 1 part per trillion. Topo Chico was nearly 10 times over that line. These are forever chemicals, substances linked to cancer, immune system damage, and developmental problems in children, and they do not leave your body. After the results went public, Coca-Cola upgraded its filtration systems. A 2021 retest showed levels had dropped to 3.9 parts per trillion. Better, but still almost 4 times what many experts consider safe. The brand's own parent company had to admit the problem existed and scramble to fix it, and they only did it after they got caught. But the number 1 brand on our avoid list might be the most unsettling of all, because the people buying it thought they were making the healthiest possible choice. Number 1. Starkey Spring Water. Starkey is manufactured by Whole Foods and sold in most of its U.S. stores and on Amazon. When it launched in 2015, Whole Foods Chief Operating Officer A.C. Gallo called it amazingly pristine water that naturally flows out of the ground from a spring in Idaho. The label says, "Made by Mother Nature." People bought Starkey specifically because it was sold at Whole Foods, a store that has built its entire brand around health, purity, and doing better. And they paid a premium for it, trusting that Whole Foods had done the homework. Consumer Reports tested dozens of bottled water brands and found that Starkey contained arsenic levels ranging from 9.49 to 9.56 parts per billion, at least 3 times higher than every other brand tested. In 2019 testing, one sample hit 10.1 parts per billion, which actually exceeds the federal limit of 10. And this was not news to Whole Foods. In late 2016, the FDA notified them that Florida's bottled water regulator had found arsenic at 11.7 parts per billion, above the legal threshold. Weeks later, a second round of tests found 12 parts per billion. Whole Foods recalled more than 2,000 cases, but they kept selling the brand. Out of 130 bottled water brands tested by Consumer Reports, Starkey had the highest arsenic content of any brand still on the market. A class action lawsuit followed. Consumer Reports formally asked Whole Foods to pull the product, and here is the detail that stays with you. In the states of New Jersey and New Hampshire, where tap water arsenic limits are set at 5 parts per billion, Starkey spring water would be illegal coming out of a faucet, but it is perfectly legal in a bottle on a Whole Foods shelf. Now for the 8 brands that are actually worth your money. Number 8. Essentia. Essentia uses a multi-step purification process that starts with reverse osmosis, microfiltration, and ultraviolet exposure, which strips out nearly everything, including PFAS and heavy metals. The company then adds trace amounts of electrolytes and ionizes the water to a pH of 9.5. Essentia publishes its water quality reports and submits to third-party testing. The brand is widely available in grocery stores across the country, which matters, because the best water in the world does you no good if you cannot find it. There are no recalls on record, no class action lawsuits, and no PFAS flags in independent testing. It is purified water, which means it does not carry the mineral profile of a natural spring. But if your priority is knowing exactly what is in the bottle and what is not, Essentia gives you that transparency. It is a solid everyday option for people who want clean water without paying boutique prices. Number 7. Proud Source Water. Proud Source bottles. Spring water in aluminum cans instead of plastic. The water comes from Rocky Mountain Springs, and the company has been transparent about its sourcing since launch. The aluminum packaging is a meaningful difference because plastic bottles are the primary source of microplastic contamination in bottled water. A Columbia University study found that the average plastic water bottle contains roughly 240,000 plastic particles. Aluminum is not perfect. The lining inside the can is often made with a thin polymer coating, but the microplastic shedding is significantly lower than what you get from PET plastic bottles. Aluminum is also infinitely recyclable without losing quality, which is something plastic cannot claim. Proud Source is not the cheapest option on the shelf, and its availability is more limited than the big national brands. But for anyone looking to cut their microplastic exposure while still buying bottled water, the can makes a measurable difference. The water itself is clean, mineral-rich, and third-party tested. Number 6. Flow Water. Flow takes a different approach to packaging entirely. Their water comes in plant-based Tetra Pak cartons made from renewable materials instead of plastic or aluminum. The water is sourced from natural springs, with an alkaline pH of 8.1. The carton packaging virtually eliminates the microplastic leaching issue that plagues every brand selling in PET plastic. And because the cartons are made from sustainably sourced paperboard, they have a smaller carbon footprint than plastic bottles or glass. Flow publishes its mineral content and water quality data openly. The brand has become a quiet favorite among people who care about both what they are drinking and what their packaging does to the environment after they are done with it. It is not the most widely available brand on this list, and the carton format takes some getting used to if you have been reaching for bottles your whole life. But in terms of matching clean water with responsible packaging, Flow is one of the few brands that delivers on both counts. Number 5. Waiakea. Waiakea is sourced from the Kea'au Aquifer on the Big Island of Hawaii, where rainfall filters through thousands of feet of porous volcanic rock before reaching the source. That natural filtration gives the water a clean mineral profile with silica, calcium, and magnesium, minerals that were put there by geology, not a lab. The company was one of the first bottled water brands to earn certified carbon neutral status, and they have a one-for-one donation model, providing clean water to communities in need for every liter sold. The water has a naturally alkaline pH of around 8.2. Waiakea also publishes its water quality reports publicly. There are no PFAS flags, no recall history, and no class action lawsuits on record. The main drawback is price. Waiakea costs more than your average grocery store brand, and it still ships in plastic bottles, which means the microplastic question is not completely off the table. But the source water itself is among the cleanest commercially available in the United States. Number 4. San Pellegrino. San Pellegrino has been bottling mineral water in the Italian Alps since 1899. It is sourced from natural springs near Bergamo, and the water picks up minerals like calcium, magnesium, and sulfate as it travels through underground limestone. In a 2018 study that tested 259 bottled water brands for microplastics, San Pellegrino had the lowest contamination levels among the brands examined, with 74 particles per liter in the most contaminated bottle tested. Compare that to some brands that recorded over 1,000 particles per liter. Part of the reason is packaging. San Pellegrino has long been available in glass bottles, and glass does not shed plastic into your water. The large green glass bottle you see at restaurants is not just tradition. It is a real barrier against contamination. Consumer Reports did find some carbonated brands with PFAS above 1 part per trillion, but San Pellegrino's sparkling water tested below that threshold. For a brand that has been around for over 125 years, that track record counts for something. Number 3. Voss. Voss water comes from an artesian source in southern Norway, a region with almost no industrial contamination. The aquifer sits beneath layers of rock and sand that act as a natural filter, keeping out pollutants before the water ever reaches the surface. Voss has been available in glass bottles since it launched, and the glass option remains its signature packaging. No plastic leaching, no microplastic shedding, no PET contamination from the container. The water itself is exceptionally low in sodium and total dissolved solids, which gives it a noticeably clean, neutral taste. Voss is not a budget brand. You will pay more for it than for most things in the water aisle, and the glass bottles are heavier, which means higher shipping costs and a bigger carbon footprint. But if your primary concern is what is actually in the water and what the container is doing to it, Voss gives you very few things to worry about. It is one of the only widely available brands where the packaging genuinely matches the product's purity claims. Number 2. Aqua Carpatica. Aqua Carpatica comes from the Carpathian Mountains in Romania, sourced from the Bajanaru Spring near Vatra Dornei. The water is naturally filtered through millions of years of volcanic rock formations, and it reaches the surface without any chemical treatment, chlorination, or artificial processing. What makes Aqua Carpatica unusual is that it is naturally nitrate-free, which is extremely rare in bottled water. Most spring waters contain at least trace nitrates from agricultural runoff or geological deposits. Aqua Carpatica also tests non-detectable for PFAS and heavy metals, with official analysis showing calcium at 52 milligrams per liter and magnesium at 17. A beneficial mineral balance that comes from the source itself, not from an additive list. The naturally sparkling version gets its carbonation from ancient volcanic CO2, not from industrial injection. The pH sits at a naturally alkaline 8.2. This is not a brand you will find in every convenience store, and the price reflects its specialty status. But in terms of what is actually in the water, how it gets there, and what it does not contain, Aqua Carpatica is one of the cleanest commercially available options in the world. Number 1. Icelandic Glacial. Icelandic Glacial is sourced from the Ölfus Spring in Iceland, a source fed by rainfall that filters through layers of ancient lava rock for decades before reaching the aquifer. The water is bottled at the spring without any treatment, additives, or chemical processing. Official testing shows non-detectable levels of arsenic, lead, PFAS, and nanoplastics, well below FDA standards across the board. The Icelandic Public Health Authority conducts regular inspections of the facility, and the company runs daily tests in an on-site laboratory that exceeds FDA, World Health Organization, and NSF standards. The water has a naturally alkaline pH of 8.4, with calcium at 32 milligrams per liter and magnesium at roughly 6.5. Those minerals come from the volcanic geology, not from a laboratory. And Icelandic Glacial is available in glass bottles, which eliminates the microplastic contamination issue entirely. There are no recalls on record, no lawsuits, no PFAS detections, and no industrial contamination anywhere near the source. When a brand can point to its spring, show you the test results, open its doors to government inspectors, and still come up clean, that is not marketing. That is just water done right. The labels will not tell you everything. The brands on the avoid list are counting on you not to dig deeper. Check for published water quality reports before you buy, and when you can, choose glass over plastic. If you want to know which everyday grocery products are hiding the same kind of secrets, that video is right here.